Okay, so you want to own a medieval pirate ship. Not a royal fleet, not a merchant vessel peacefully moving barrels between obedient ports, but a ship that survives by taking value from other ships in the North and Baltic seas around the late 13th century. The harbor makes the idea look almost sensible. Merchant hulls arrive low in the water, warehouses fill, cargo changes hands. Silver passes across counting tables, debts are entered into books, and every vessel leaving the quay carries something that somebody else wants. You appear to need only a ship, a crew, and the nerve to intercept one of them. But the first thing you discover is that pirate ship is not a stable medieval business category. It is a judgment. The same act of maritime seizure might be described differently by the attacker, the victim, a town council, a ruler, and the court asked to restore the property. A crew may see opportunity, a merchant sees robbery, a political patron may see useful violence, a hostile port sees a reason to confiscate everything. That distinction controls whether your voyage ends with a sale, a pardon, a lawsuit, or a rope. And that is the central economic problem of medieval piracy. Capturing value is only the visible part. The real business is converting disputed property into usable wealth before merchants, towns, rulers, and creditors organize against you. The ship is merely where the risk begins. You start at the quay, looking at the hull you supposedly own. Ownership sounds straightforward until the vessel needs sails, rigging, provisions, repairs, skilled hands, storage, and access to a harbor. A ship at sea is an asset. A ship without a cooperative port is an unusually expensive piece of wood. Someone must supply food before departure. Someone must trust that you will return. Someone must repair damage afterward. Someone must accept whatever you bring back. Even if every participant is paid with a promised share rather than a purse of coin, those promises still divide the result before the voyage begins. This matters because medieval Europe is not a modern cash economy with abundant, standardized money waiting behind every transaction. Precious metal is chronically scarce. Coin circulates, but so do obligations. Credit, payment in kind, and claims written into accounts. A cargo may therefore have several values at once. There is the value its original owner expected in the intended market. There is the value recorded in a claim after it disappears. There is the price a nervous buyer will offer for property with a questionable history. And there is the amount you can actually use before your crew, suppliers, patrons, and creditors demand their shares. Only the last one keeps the ship moving. Imagine your first interception succeeds. No heroic duel is required for the economic lesson. A merchant vessel is separated from protection, forced to yield, and brought under your control. For a few hours, the deck appears to prove the fantasy. There are goods where there were none before. Perhaps there is another vessel as well. Your visible assets have increased without a season of production, a workshop full of labor, or a peaceful trading voyage. On the surface, this is extraordinary productivity. Then the counting begins. The goods are not coin. Their quality may be uncertain. Their measures may not be trusted. Their original owner may be known. The intended market may be closed to you. The nearest town may have commercial relationships more valuable than anything aboard your ship. A merchant who buys from you may face accusations, confiscation, or retaliation. If he accepts the risk, he will not pay the same price he would pay for goods with a clean origin. Your apparent fortune immediately shrinks. The second vessel is not free wealth either. It needs sailors, repairs, provisions, and a port willing to receive it. If you divide your crew to control it, you weaken both ships. If you abandon it, the asset disappears. If you keep it, your operational costs grow before any proceeds become available. A captured object can increase your wealth on paper while reducing your ability to survive the voyage home. That is the first reversal. Piracy does not eliminate the commercial chain. It makes the chain harder and more expensive. A lawful merchant normally tries to move goods from a place where they are available to a place where buyers value them more. He depends on transport, information, contracts, credit, market access, and some expectation that ownership will be recognized. You have removed the original purchase price, but you have damaged almost everything else. The goods still need transport. They still need storage. They still need a buyer. Their quality still matters. Their sale may still depend on brokers, market authorities, and local relationships. Yet the very act that gave you possession has weakened the institutions that turn possession into value. You have inventory without secure title. That may be the worst form of inventory in the medieval world. A barrel, bale, or vessel does not become wealth merely because armed men stand beside it. It becomes wealth when another person accepts it in payment, gives coin for it, credits it against a debt, or uses political authority to recognize your claim. Until then, you are guarding a problem. The crew understands this even if nobody uses modern financial language. They have spent time at sea, they have accepted danger, they expect compensation. If their reward depends on the voyage's result, the division of that result becomes a labor contract enforced by a group of armed participants on a confined wooden platform. That is not a minor management issue. Pay everyone a fixed amount in advance, and you need money before departure. Promise shares afterward, and you preserve cash but surrender part of every success. Delay distribution because the goods have not sold, and the crew bears your liquidity problem. Hide part of the proceeds, and the next voyage begins with fewer willing hands, or with hands willing to settle the account themselves. The crew is therefore not simply labor. It is also a source of capital, because deferred compensation finances the voyage. It is a source of military power, because the ship cannot seize anything without it, and it is a claimant against the result. Your largest expense may not appear as a payment at all. It appears as ownership you never truly had. Now the harbor becomes more important than the ship. To leave port, you needed supplies and tolerance. To return, you need protection, a place to unload, and access to people capable of converting goods into coin or credit. A coastal community may benefit from your spending. Ship workers may find repairs. Suppliers may sell provisions. Buyers may acquire goods cheaply. Local power holders may gain useful men and vessels. But the same community also trades with merchants who want safe seas. Every voyage forces the port to compare two streams of value. One is immediate and concentrated, whatever money, goods, employment, or influence your crew brings home. The other is slower but larger, repeated lawful trade, customs, market activity, reliable credit, and the willingness of outside merchants to return. Piracy can enrich particular participants while making the commercial network around them poorer. That is why the support protecting you can vanish even after a successful voyage. A town may tolerate one predator while the benefits remain local and the retaliation remains distant. It becomes less tolerant when merchants change routes, neighboring towns protest, or collective suppression becomes cheaper than continued loss. Your greatest enemy is not necessarily a better pirate. It is coordination. Individual merchants are vulnerable because each vessel carries only its own crew and cargo. Towns can pool authority and resources. Medieval communities formed leagues to suppress piracy, police routes, and resist predatory power. In the North and Baltic regions, federations of towns demonstrate how commercial communities could act beyond a single set of walls when insecurity threatened exchange. The economic purpose is larger than hunting one troublesome vessel. Collective action, changes the calculation for everyone. A merchant considering departure asks whether the expected gain from trade justifies the danger. If attacks become more likely, he can carry less valuable cargo, delay sailing, seek company, change routes, demand better terms, or stay in port. Each response reduces the pool of easy targets. The remaining traffic becomes more cautious. Your success teaches your victims. That creates a vicious cycle for you. A profitable interception encourages more raiding or a larger crew. More raiding encourages merchants and towns to coordinate. Coordination raises the cost of finding and taking ships. Fewer unprotected vessels mean longer searches and more provisions consumed. Longer voyages increase exposure to storms, damage, and desertion. Higher costs make each crew more desperate for a valuable result. The business becomes more aggressive at exactly the moment the market becomes less vulnerable. This is the piracy paradox. Visible success can destroy the conditions that produced it. A merchant can benefit when his market grows. A raider often suffers when his own activity grows too common. After the first voyage, however, you do not yet see the whole cycle. You see goods sold at a discount, a crew paid, repairs waiting, and enough resources left to consider another departure. The result feels positive. The ship survived. The harbor admitted you. The promises made before sailing have mostly been satisfied. That is the dangerous moment. You may interpret survival as proof that the system works. What it really proves is that the network has not reacted yet. The next voyage demands a choice. You can remain near familiar waters, where you know the harbors and routes, but where merchants may now recognize the danger. Or you can sail farther, spending more time and provisions in exchange for surprise. Neither choice removes risk, it only moves it. Stay close, and political memory accumulates. Complaints reach people who can act. Buyers become cautious. Your port's merchants may fear retaliation. Sail farther, and the ship depends more heavily on weather, navigation, supplies, and uncertain reception. A damaged sail far from a friendly quay can erase the value of a successful seizure. The apparent business decision is where to hunt. The real decision is how much political and logistical distance you can afford. You choose distance. Days pass without a result. Provisions decline. The crew has not yet been paid because their compensation depends on success. Every empty day transfers risk from you to them, but only temporarily. Eventually, their dissatisfaction returns the risk to you as a discipline problem. Then a target appears. This time, the seizure is less useful than expected. The goods are difficult to sell quickly. The vessel has suffered damage. Your own ship needs work as well. You have increased gross possession, but not liquidity. A modern observer might call this a cash flow crisis. On the deck, it looks simpler. There is valuable property everywhere, and not enough immediately acceptable payment to satisfy the people who made the capture possible. That gap is the hidden engine of the entire system. Your crew cannot eat an appraisal. A supplier may refuse a bale if he doubts he can resell it. A ship worker may accept payment in kind only at a deep discount. A political protector may demand the most portable and defensible portion of the proceeds. The more urgently you need conversion, the stronger the buyer's bargaining position becomes. Piracy appears to be forced acquisition. After the seizure, you are the one negotiating from weakness. You return to port, but the quay is no longer neutral. Merchants have complained. Local authorities face pressure. A town dependent on wider trade must consider not only what you bring in, but what your presence keeps away. This is where commercial institutions matter. Guilds and urban organizations are not merely groups that control crafts or ceremonial life. They can shape competition, contract enforcement, market access, quality control, taxation, and commercial security. None of this means every guild organizes an anti-piracy fleet. It means the market you need is governed by institutions with reasons to protect repeat exchange. You offer a one-time bargain. Lawful merchants offer an ongoing revenue stream. If the town chooses the network, your cargo loses value before a guard touches it. Buyers disappear, credit closes. Warehouses become unavailable. Repairs are delayed. The ship may still float, but its economic base has already been confiscated. This is why a pirate's most valuable asset is not necessarily the vessel or what it carries. It is tolerated access to ordinary commerce. You cannot create a separate pirate economy from nothing. You depend on farmers producing food, craftspeople maintaining ships, merchants valuing goods, brokers finding buyers, and towns recognizing transactions. Predation sits on top of production. It does not replace it. Push too hard, and you damage the base beneath you. The effect spreads beyond your crew. A fishing vessel that fears attack may avoid productive waters or remain ashore. A merchant may divide cargo among several ships, increasing total transport costs. A town may spend resources on patrols or collective defense instead of walls, roads, storage, or trade. Goods arrive later or in smaller quantities. Credit becomes more cautious because repayment now depends on both the market and survival at sea. The cost of piracy is therefore larger than the property taken. It includes voyages never attempted, cargo never loaded, credit never extended, routes made longer, and resources diverted into protection. Those losses are difficult to see because they do not arrive at the quay in a damaged ship. They appear as absence. An empty berth can be more economically important than a captured cargo. This also explains why measuring medieval piracy as a single industry is misleading. There is no trustworthy average pirate voyage that can be stretched across centuries and seas. Maritime law, political authority, commercial institutions, currencies, and access to protection varied by place and time. Surviving evidence does not provide a reliable market size, average return, standard crew wage, or normal capture rate. False precision would make the story easier and the history worse. But the absence of an average does not prevent the economic mechanism from becoming clear. Every voyage faces the same sequence of questions. Who supplies resources before departure? Who accepts delayed compensation? Who recognizes the result? Who converts disputed property into usable value? Who protects that conversion? And who pays when merchants and towns change their behavior? Your second voyage answers them badly. Suppliers want stronger assurances because the first voyage did not make them permanently rich. Crew members want a larger claim because the voyage lasted longer. Buyers offer less because the goods are harder to place. The town offers less tolerance because the political cost has risen. A larger gross capture leaves you with a smaller controllable remainder. That is not merely high revenue and high cost. It is a shift in bargaining power. Everyone essential to the conversion process knows that you cannot easily go elsewhere. The supplier, buyer, protector, and crew can each claim part of the result because each controls a bottleneck. You control violence at sea. They control value on land. Now you face the most important choice in the story. You can intensify the operation, hoping that one greater seizure overwhelms the discounts, claims, and losses. Or you can reduce exposure by relying more heavily on political protection, local relationships, and selective action. The first option looks bold. It is also how a temporary opportunity becomes a coordinated regional problem. A larger crew consumes more provisions. More ships need more repairs. More seizures produce more victims capable of identifying a shared interest. Towns that might ignore isolated attacks gain a reason to cooperate. Merchants, who compete in the market, can still agree that no market survives if vessels cannot arrive. The second option appears less profitable because it limits immediate opportunities, yet it addresses the variable that actually controls survival: legitimacy, or at least tolerated status. This does not magically make disputed seizure lawful. It changes who has an incentive to defend you, admit you, buy from you, or reinterpret your actions. The protection is fragile because political interests change, but fragile protection may still be more valuable than another captured hull. So you reduce the scale of visible predation and spend more effort preserving access. You keep enough resources available to provision the ship without promising the entire result in advance. You avoid bringing every disputed object into the same harbor. You treat crew distribution as a survival requirement rather than an afterthought. Most importantly, you watch the response of towns and merchants, not merely the number of ships at sea. The adjustment feels less like piracy because less time is spent imagining loot. That is precisely why it works better. The good outcome begins when your political shelter remains useful to the people providing it. The crew receives an accepted share. Buyers can convert goods without exposing themselves to intolerable danger. The level of disruption stays below the point that makes collective suppression urgent. You do not become infinitely rich. You remain operational because the network still has participants willing to absorb your risk. The middle outcome is far less romantic. Some voyages produce nothing usable. Others produce property sold below ordinary market value. Repairs and provisions consume the next departure's resources. Your ship survives, but only through repeated bargaining with people who possess greater control over the harbor than you do. You appear independent at sea while becoming increasingly dependent on land. Then there is the break. It begins not with a battle, but with a refusal. A buyer will not touch the cargo. A supplier will not extend another promise. A town decides that merchants arriving safely are worth more than your crew's spending. Another town cooperates. The route you know becomes watched, the port you need becomes closed, and every day of delay consumes provisions while preserving none of the cargo's theoretical value. Crew claims do not disappear because the market has rejected you. Repair needs do not wait for a legal dispute. The ship may be seized, damaged, abandoned, or simply rendered useless by the loss of support. Your assets collapse together because they were never independent. The vessel depended on the port. The crew depended on distribution. Distribution depended on sale. Sale depended on market access. Market access depended on tolerance. Tolerance depended on piracy remaining less costly than suppressing it. Once that final comparison reverses, the entire business can fail without a single merchant defeating you at sea. Return to the harbor where the story began. Merchant hulls still arrive low in the water. Warehouses still fill. Silver, goods, debts, and promises still pass between hands. At first, you saw targets. Now you see us a network producing value through repetition and trust. Your ship can interrupt that network. It cannot reproduce it. The merchants create cargo before sailing. Craftspeople preserve vessels between voyages. Creditors bridge the time between expense and payment. Towns create places where strangers can exchange. Guilds and authorities shape access and enforcement. Leagues make collective defense possible when private protection is insufficient. You enter after all that value has been created and try to remove part of it. That can be profitable for a voyage. It can even support a crew for a time. But the apparent return must be reduced by the discount on disputed goods, the claims of labor and protection, the cost of waiting, the danger of weather, the need for repair, and the escalating response of commercial communities. No honest surviving figure allows you to declare a normal medieval pirate profit or a reliable return on the ship. The meaningful calculation is not a universal percentage. It is the order in which claims arrive. The supplier is paid before the voyage or trusts you. The crew accepts danger before receiving its share. The merchant loses property before any court or authority decides what happens next. The buyer demands compensation for legal and political risk. The port weighs your spending against the trade your presence may repel. And the towns carry the defensive cost until cooperation becomes cheaper than continued predation. The money does not simply move from merchant to pirate. It leaks through a chain of participants who control food, labor, resale, protection, credit, and access. That is why the captain who captures the most may not keep the most. The decisive variable is not the value on the captured deck. It is whether the surrounding commercial system will still convert that value for you. You wanted to own a pirate ship because the ship looked like freedom from the ordinary rules of trade. In reality, it makes you more dependent on those rules than the merchant you attack. Medieval piracy was not a business that escaped the market. It was a business that stole from the market while begging the market to make the theft valuable.